Welcome back to the Dorkcast. This is episode, what is it? Second episode? Third episode? Does anybody here remember? Because I completely lost the fucking track.
I I'm here.
Well, no, what episode is it though? Does everybody remember?
Think two? Last time I checked.
Yeah, last time I checked it was also two, but might be wrong on that.
Who knows?
Might be wrong on that. May not be wrong. We don't have the exact answer here.
Let's just say two.
Alright, so now we're currently switching through all my monitors. Yeah, there we go. So now I'm just gonna grab. What is it? Not scaling. Shit. This is the fun part about a podcast. You have no clue what the fuck you're doing.
I mentioned distractables like first time.
If only it was that simple.
Hello, everybody. My name is Markiplier, and today we're gonna see if Wade remembers what I did on Unis Honest, episode 203.
I would hope to God you wouldn't make somebody do that. That sounds like torture. But nonetheless, let's see. We're gonna do Fallout capture. Let's do game capture and just target Fallout instead of this. Can game capture work? Looks like it doesn't work, but that's fine. So let's see. So let's go ahead and start with some of the basic topics here while I do my audio fixing here. So let's start simple. What is everybody's first tabletop RPG?
My first tabletop RPG. You mean board game specifically, right?
No, tabletop like D&D.
Actually, that would be D&D.
Okay, so D&D was your first dive.
Yeah. Better way to roll the dice.
I mean, that is fair.
Yep.
Nonetheless, so then let's go ahead and do this. Jester, what about you? What was your first game?
Same here, D&D.
Okay, so D&D. And how long ago was that for you?
Oh, I gotta look. I mean, let's see, I started at least a year ago.
Okay. And what would you say was it with me or was it with somebody else?
Oh, someone else. I literally did it on RL before I started getting used to it D&D on Discord.
Okay. And as for like what would you say is the longest you've played? What level were you when you ended?
The funny part about that specific campaign, the very first campaign that I'm in. Well, we didn't end it officially, but like the highest level I've been was 7, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the most most D&D games be like.
I mean that's fair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean it's all right, so looks like my thing is deciding to have a seizure, but nonetheless, and we'll screw it. We'll let them see my taskbar. So it doesn't matter. But here's the better question: what do you enjoy about D&D?
I like D&D just purely for the fact of how you can just be in a story uh with that you and your friends do where where you can just say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and you can just have fun with it. There's no like serious task or roles you need to learn. Just enjoy your time.
That's okay. And what would you say is your least favorite thing about D&D?
I think my least favorite thing about D&D is just how sometimes like there will be a moment where you're just enjoying the game and then it just all stops being fun and someone could easily just ruin the mood because of like they're trying to be a try hard or like the DM could just end up like trying his best to be more creative, which honestly hinders the game.
Okay. And what would you say is the better part?
The better part is just when you have like a group of friends and you're just vibing with each other. You got
Huh.
the dungeon master that could just say what he wants and we just roll with it. We have fun and we enjoy the story.
Jester, what about you? What's your thoughts on that? Jester, did we lose you?
I'm here. I'm here. Damn, not even a second. Telling me I'm trying to phrase my I'm phrasing around here. Now, like first time when I tried it. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit scary at first, cause like, dang, what I'm doing or what not. It's just you go with the flow. You roll your dice and enjoy the story that came along.
Okay. And what would you say was the best part of your D&D experience?
Oh shit, where do I begin with the my very first D&D campaign? Like there was so many bangers, but like my favorite one, like for context, I was playing a wizard character and someone else played a wizard character. So what happened is a nobleman asked asked our party to figure out, hey, what went wrong with his nephew, because like his nephew went to a summer camp. Plot twist is wasn't really much of a summer camp, and came back different. So the first place we have to go was at the school. The other the other wizard, like I'm cutting this real short. The other wizard, because when talking to the headmaster or principal of that said school, the wizard thought, hey, let me use shrink and enlarge on myself. Literally shrink himself down to size as a kid. When Tom asked where the parent was, which was the wizard himself, he was nowhere there. And luckily for me, I had the disguise self spell.
Okay.
I'm like, and I made my character be like, hold on, like I'll go get him. No one else, except for my DM, knew that I had the disguise self spell. So I went out the room, yelled to an empty hall, disguised myself as the other wizard, because to be the parent of the other wizard that shrank himself down as to make him look like a child. Just entered in the room and like not only the players out of game react to it, but their characters in game kind of react to it as if like, holy shit, what the fuck? Hold up, that's pretty cool. Like that there for me is a nice core memory
Okay.
I
What is your
remember it.
and Dion? What is your favorite memory? I don't think I asked you that.
I think my favorite memory when I was doing D&D was probably oh crap, what was it? I haven't been in many campaigns. I did this short campaign here at college, and basically what happened. I was just spectating the entire time though. I wasn't actually playing the game, but basically I was watching one of my friends DM, and and he allowed two of the players to have guns.
Okay.
And I was just like, two players with guns, this is gonna be something. And then next thing you know, because of the fact that he also had an artificer on the party, things happened. They ended up making like basically a bomb, a giant bomb.
So
And
per standard with any artificer, explosives
yes,
are involved.
yes. So the two gun wielders and the artificer, they work together to basically make a vehicle, so like a horse pulling, like a stable, and just slam it into like the dungeon to defeat the boss. Here's the thing: they rolled high, and they ended up killing the boss without ever actually facing it.
Did they even know the boss was in there, or was it a surprise?
Oh no, they knew. They knew the boss was in there. This was gonna be try. This was gonna be their attempt to like distract it so they could have a surprise round, just for it to end up with them accidentally killing it.
On them though for just knocking it out the park already.
Yeah, no, I found it I just found it hilarious due to the fact of how like they didn't even get to try at the end of the day, like to actually fight it. It was just, oh, there we go.
Yeah, that sounds definitely like something that would go horribly wrong and then somehow horribly right.
Yep.
Now, what would you guys say is your worst experience?
I think my worst experience was
Like, what at what point would you say you've had one bad memory with D&D?
uh
I wouldn't call mine a bad memory. Just a big pet peeve is when there's an interaction happening with a player's character in game, and everyone else is not paying attention for shit.
They're
yeah.
And
basically
even
like
more,
they're treating it like it doesn't matter.
no, no, no. Let me finish. Let me finish here. And even worse, their own player character could literally be in the same damn room and not pay attention.
Mm.
See, I think one of the things that annoyed me during a campaign was someone. This person was clearly inexperienced of being a DM. That they really wanted to try their hands at it, and basically, as we like tried to play the game, he was just like, "Wait, hang on, let me look that." Like so much time paused, and I don't even think we ever got to a battle.
So
So
they constantly so one of the downsides that you've dealt with is somebody who basically had no clue what they were doing
like
and it took made it
like
take
they
longer.
yeah, no. Like, here's the thing: they just didn't properly know how to read the book. I can like here's the thing: I know that I can't read the book properly because I'm not because I haven't had chances to learn how to be a DM. But this person really wanted to be a DM, but he just had trouble reading the book. So like
So
he
he
had to
didn't
go to
prepare. So he essentially came in blind, no prep.
yeah, and that just annoyed me a lot because like everybody was just kind of there waiting for it to continue on.
Okay. Now, let's get into a question that I got a list of questions pulled up on a separate monitor, but they're questions that I think might be interesting to go ahead and ask here. Would you guys say it's more would you guys say that it's harder to be a DM, so, like in terms of dealing with a party, or would you say it's more difficult to be a player dealing with a DM?
I think it's more difficult being a DM dealing with a party.
And what would you say are some of the cons that that you see in that interaction?
I think one of the cons is definitely is like you need to make sure that the party will eventually decide to be like go with the journey. They whether it's a homebrew or the game itself, like they're willing to not only play the actual game but also just still have fun. There will be people that will definitely look at it as a it's a video game, which is not.
Yeah,
And then
like
there
people who treat it like a video game, like okay, conversation doesn't fucking matter. Do X, Y, Z, got it.
yeah, and then there's just the ones where it's like they rather try to see if they could help out like go and see if they can find some other thing going on in the village, even though there's nothing else to do other than the main quest that's in the beginning of the story.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Jester, what's your take on all this?
speaking, I kind of have the same view of it. Like it's very hard to be a DM when dealing with a party, and also to add into that, depending on how the players are in the party itself, because sometimes I'm conflict. Because like a good example, a very nice good example, is when I'm dealing with a murder hobo or someone trying to straight up min max.
Okay, and for those who don't, and do you want to do you want me to give the translation gesture, or would you like to offer it for those in the podcast that don't know what it is?
Let me go ahead. Murder hobo, as as it stands, that has the word murder, likes to straight up kill everything on site. Yes, there's technically ways ATM can handle it, and literally there is a monster meant for a murder hobo or murder hobos.
Which one is that one again? Remind me. It's been a while.
I don't remember that one. I don't remember the name, but like yeah, there's literally a monster for that. And as for min maxers, essentially also for people that's not used to the term min maxers and video games and etc. Is that they try to do a lot, but also
They,
try to
yeah.
do with very little.
Well, the way I would like to put it is a min maxer tends to be a person that like looks at their character stats and instead of accepting that their character isn't gonna have an 18 and everything, like I've seen two types of min maxers. I've seen those that literally roll stats until they have three 18s and the three primary skills they use, or they're the people that like they look at a class and go, okay, I'm gonna plan out everything now that I'm going to want to have later, and they tend to look at it like they basically look at it as more of an it's a problem if you don't get the maximized statistics and you don't pick a path. Like those who are literally just building a character for roleplay reasons, they tend to be those that don't roleplay at all. Like they do it more for just the experience of being in a fantasy world. So it's kind of like what Dion said earlier, where it's a game to them. Those tend to be where the min maxers are. I agree with you on the idea of murder hobos. One thing I would like to ask though is, do you guys know? Here's something that I've been asked as well, and this is more of a personal question, but do you think that there is a decline of DMs in 5e? And if so, what do you think is the problem? Why do you think people are like, what do you think is the reason why that happens?
Uh, One, I think there is a lack of DMs in 5e, and I think, and I actually don't mean to say this because like they're very talented, but I kind of have to blame a little bit on Critical Role and Dimension 20 due to the fact of how even like these are experienced players, they're veterans. They have set up games where, in all honesty, it feels more fun to play as a player character in these overexpansive worlds. Even though the problem is that they don't understand that when these DMs made it, it took like years, or at least like a whole year, constantly every single day, to write out this story, understand like how the characters will interact and how to perceive the storyline without ever making it sound like it's forced. That's part of the thing I've noticed. And also kind of just how like the way of making a world, you know how difficult it is
Oh
specifically.
no, absolutely. I'm building my own world right now on World Anvil from essentially scratch
Yeah,
and my
so
own thoughts, which I think, if you don't mind me throwing my hat in, what
yeah.
I would like to say is what I think the problem is three separate things. Firstly, this is more of a common person error. People look at D&D on two perspectives. They look at being a DM as you have to almost specialize in being a DM and you have to do all this extra work, which from I think honestly being a DM just changes really just means that you're going to read a little more and you read ahead. But people also expect it to be like people expect that a DM has to basically be like Matt Mercer or has to be like another character,
Well,
which
I
I
can
know.
stop you right there. Like
Okay.
I think another thing that is a problem with being a DM is trying to if you're in like an actual every week or 2 weeks, a group of you will come together to play this D&D campaign. You have to predict what your players will do a lot. I think that could be very challenging for some
Okay.
people
All right. Do you
because
mind if I go back to the other points once you're done?
no, yeah, no, that's just the point I said. It's
Okay.
predicting what your characters will do because
So
sometimes a character can do something you wouldn't expect.
I think it's also a effort thing. Now, I'm not saying this to say that players are lazy. Not at all. I think it's the opposite. Players really have to build a character from nothing. I think the difference between a DM and a player is not just the power dynamic, at least in the comparison between the two, but I think it's because as a DM, you essentially have to keep everyone in line while also trying to be both the good guy and the bad guy. And I think the problem within that is DMs tend to get looked at like one or the other. They're never both. They're always one or the other. And for some people, that really upsets them because they don't like it when they're basically forced into a position as the DM where they're always going to be looked at like almost like they're doing everything they can to be against the party instead of, trying to help the party.
Hmm. I think another thing as well is how once you find a DM, a lot of people will be like, "Can you be the DM?" They don't want their hats to be thrown into the mixture as well. Whether it's doubt that their world could work, or it's just they're good at being a DM, so let's just let them be a DM. Which honestly makes it very difficult
I
because
think
a
it makes
lot of
that. Sorry, I have something to add on to that.
yeah.
I personally abhor people that enforce a forever DM. Like, I get it when there's only like, it's two players and a DM, and it's like we don't have the money or the resources to play D&D as a DM, which I mean nowadays that's not the case really anymore because you can just pirate shit, which I both condone and don't condone, but that's a different story. I think the difference is DMs kind of also. I think that's actually one of the other reasons why people don't want to be a DM is because you look at it like it's a 50-50 chance nearly of always being the DM, or you're only the DM for this one event, but you're usually the type of person that ends up DMs end up having to play as not just the enemy, but as everything else, and that causes them to then start mixing things up and looking at things differently, and it doesn't help.
Yeah.
Now, Jester, would you have anything to add into that?
Realistically speaking, not really. Like,
Okay.
the issue is, I have I have not done that many campaigns, nor have the chance do campaigns with different other DMs.
Okay.
So I would not know nothing about the storages as is, but as you guys were making the points of the DMs, like there's a chance they either go 50-50 of being DM good DM or bad DM.
Well, not really a 50-50 of good or bad. I was stating more like the forever DM. It's like the problem is you almost gamble every time you are the DM because then they look to you as well. It's worked before. Why don't we do it again?
Hmm.
Which I don't know what your take on that is, but as a forever DM, I think I'm one of the very few examples of a DM that couldn't care less about what side I'm on between player or like DM. I don't care. I usually end up being the DM anyway, but that's because I'm a writer. I'm trying to build a world, so it kind of falls in. But that's that problem. I think the final problem with D&D in terms of like player versus DM is I think it's just it's how D&D is built. People, I think at least with fifth edition, people tend to forget that your job as the DM isn't really to keep them in line as much as it's more to guide them along the story. but everybody ends up becoming, even those that are very on point tend to get a little chaotic at times, and it's hard to kind of, for some people that's very difficult for them to do, to be like, hey guys, we need to get back onto it, because you don't want to ruin the fun, but at the same time you have to get along, you have to get onto this. So you end up being like falling into either peer pressure and not doing anything yourself, or you just let the new campaign not be about the main adventure, but whatever they're currently trying to do.
Yeah.
Which, do y'all have any comments on that?
No, not really. I mean, you really just say it in general. It's just like, yeah, there is just some things with fifth edition that like can be fun and cannot. But I also think like the past couple of years, the state of Dungeons and Dragons have been very worrisome. Let's just be honest.
Are you referring to the open game license incident?
Yeah, and then like there's also like Magic the Gathering's having a problem right now, which is also linked to Dungeons and Dragons sometimes.
Do you think that D&D itself, like, here's a question. If you weren't to look at Wizards of the Coast, do you think you like D&D?
Yeah, no, I
Like,
definitely would think I would like D&D.
okay, so you're more just up. So I think that's where everybody's upset. They aren't upset about D and like, I mean, it literally is. They aren't upset about D&D. They're upset about how D&D is being handled. I think what's going on with D&D, and that was in that situation, was Wizards was looking at it, or let's also be real, this wasn't Wizards' fault. This was Hasbro. Hasbro looks at the open game license as almost a crutch that the game is sitting on, or as a liability for content that goes wrong. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think that that's how they should have looked at it. The open game license is why we have games like Baldur's Gate 3
Yeah.
and other games. Like, I'm pretty sure even Neverwinter, their own game, falls under the open game license. But I think the problem with what they were trying to do is, I think they realized that they couldn't really rely on just books anymore, but instead of trying to focus on doing more than just books and expensive products, which, let's get into that on the next topic about the price of D&D being absurd.
Oh
Uh,
god.
I think it's also just they wanted to find an outlet to make more money, but instead of, focusing on a VTT at first, they were like, "Hey, we're just gonna do this to the open game license. That will probably fix our problems." It didn't. In fact, I believe
I
they
want to
lost.
believe that
They
actually
lost
got
a.
worse.
Didn't they? Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they lost a couple of million as a
Uh,
result of all that.
yeah, no.
Which, I mean, personally, what did they expect? Like, you quite literally pissed off your entire community in a single go. What did you think that the OGL changing and to a point where you basically started saying that, hey, we're going to charge creators, which, first of all, that's strike one. Um, I don't think they would have done well if they started charging their creators, because here's the thing. If you want people to play under your system, you don't charge them. Like, aren't we having the same problem with Unity right now? Like, Unity's trying to change
Yeah,
up
no,
how
no.
they
We're
do
still having
things.
the same issue with Unity. Granted, remember, you gotta look at the CEO of Unity. He was the same guy who was the CEO of EA, and we know what happened to EA, so.
The fact that EA nowadays is just a money bag to them,
Well,
which
well, yeah, no, seriously, like, there's so many jokes where it's like, congratulations, you have just paid for your $70 game. You need to pay an extra 30 just to get past level 1.
I'm gonna. I think that's an interesting thing as well. I just want to point out as a quick comment that games are now 70, which we all knew this was going to happen. We just thought it would happen during COVID, but it didn't.
Yeah.
I personally don't care about the price of a video game, but like on release, I think anywhere between 80, 70 to 90 is fair, like fair game.
Well, no, no, it
However,
is
I
fair
agree
game.
with you on the idea though of you shouldn't like here's how DLC should work. I think that like the Elder Scrolls is the greatest example of DLC, and like Fallout. The way they did it is they priced the game, like the DLC, based on how much time it was, not just for them, but how much time it is in game of like content that you have. Like, I believe when Far Harbor came out, that was like 20, 30 hours of content alone. They made that like $40, $50. I think it was 40 to 35, but I might have been wrong.
Yeah,
Even
no.
Vault one, like the vault that you got to use, I think it was 77 in Fallout 4, where you get to do your own vault, like, and build it. That was like a $15 DLC, all the contraption settlement stuff was 10. Like DLC, the problem with DLC is they either don't make DLC and they make it microtransactions. Option two, they make it DLC that isn't microtransactions, but it's basically the price of the game. An example of this would be Elder Scrolls Online, where every new location is basically a $60 price tag to 50. Or they don't make DLC at all, and we basically have a game that's half made, and then we wait like a year or two for them to air quote patch it, and it adds the final versions in, which I don't get why they do that in the first place. I personally think that that's stupid.
Yeah, no. And like to follow up with the idea of like money and paid, Donkey, video game Donkey did a good talk. Back in the '90s, you would actually have to be paid for like $110 for like some games and everything, and that's just for the games itself. But when it comes down to DLC, I kind of look at Splatoon 2, especially with their Octolink expansion, because you paid like what $30 for a game, and then you had like a completely new game in general with its own storyline and everything involved, and challenges that could be like play with this gun, you get a higher reward, but the gun is even worse. Like stuff like that, where it's like money worth the price. You already paid for a full game. Here's half of the price for the DLC. Which I feel like some games should do that, and especially with like, can we get on to the topic of how games are just being pumped out nowadays? Because of the fact, like, you
Like
got games that are fully fine, and then Kong's the new video game for King Kong.
here's how I look at it. Games either end up going in two directions. It's either a money milking process that they don't realize is hurting their brand, or they tend to take routes for their games develop like advertising where and how their game is played, where it essentially turns into a cash it's either a cash grab or it's an actual game, and then even then the game is either good or it is littered with issues and microtransactions, which
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is the game companies are so reliant on microtransactions that they don't know how to make a game fully without it taking longer. And the problem is the industry is basically expected to make a full game in 3 to 4 years, which now, while I understand that, being somebody who knows how development works, I think that's a fault in the community. We are expecting them to basically pump out a perfect game in as little as 4 years. I think we need to just start accepting that it's going to be longer. Like how long was it until Cyberpunk was released? Wasn't it like 7 years or something, or 10 years?
Yes, but like but like since you brought up Cyberpunk, do you for like we cannot ignore how it launched. Like it's a fine game. The game is fixed. It's like working well now. But it shouldn't have taken until like last year for it to be functional
That is
compared
true, and
to current.
I do have gripes about that. However, it's a labor of love now, and that's my comment on that. But I think the
Well,
problem is we don't game companies are basically once somebody in
okay,
like
you're cutting out. You're cutting out here and there.
sorry, once somebody starts to be in like the PR and they're like, and somebody who doesn't even know about game dev says, oh, it's gonna be done by this time. It's kind of one of those things where you realize they don't know what they're talking about. Like, I don't think anybody actually understands how long it takes to make a game. Like, you hear 4 years, and a lot of people might break that down as, oh, it takes this much time to do this much time to do that. Most game companies that I have heard of tend to either do a process where it's everything at once or it's like a portion of it at once. Like this isn't something where they just do one or two things and it's done. It's like you have everybody doing everything for the game and it just takes long because it's communication. Which now I completely understand that. Like I don't expect it. I think the better games are the ones that take years, if not a decade, to make. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Baldur's Gate 3 was in progress for at least 8 years, like in design. It wasn't
Mm,
necessarily fully developed, but they had been actually working on the concept for a while.
yeah, no, exactly. But like to counteract that point, it's because of the fact that like these video games are very loved. They're very high. Like, granted, we have to agree on the fact that sometimes there will be overhype for a game. When the
Yes.
game comes out, you gotta accept how it is. You can be happy about it, you cannot be happy about it. I've heard people be mixed about the new Spider-Man game. I've played it. I think it's a fantastic game, and honestly one of my top games of the year. But there are other people that are like, it's fine, or I
Well, I
wish
mean,
it was
that's
better.
just preference. Now, that
Yeah.
does bring me into a question. What game do you think is going to win Game of the Year? Like, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and state what I think is the obvious answer. Baldur's Gate 3 kind of blew everybody else out of the water. So I don't know how they're going to, like, I don't know if any other game could top them right now.
Sure. Yeah, no. Like, okay,
Kingdom.
wait,
Right.
didn't Elden Ring come out this year or something?
No, that was last year. Jester, you were saying something?
There's still Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh yeah, no, that is true. Do you think Tears of the Kingdom really did that well though? Like,
No, I'm
I
okay. No, as a guy, like as a dude who is currently playing Tears of the Kingdom, I will firmly say that it cannot keep up with the rate that Baldur's Gate 3 has achieved. For starters, the dialogue between each character is very great. No, not great. Amazing. You get like subtle moments where they'll make gestures after dialogue changes. You have moments where you can like actually feel for the characters. I'm pretty sure a lot of people were shocked about the nude aesthetic on Baldur's Gate. Let's be honest, there are perverts out there.
yeah, but Baldur's Gate, it's D&D. Horny people
Yeah,
go to D&D
that's the
because it's a
other thing.
role play game.
I am not finished yet. But no, it's the other thing about it is like it's the creativity of how far you can choose how the game runs. You can not only choose what companion you have, you also can choose like how you interact with these battles. You can choose what kind of like your proprieties of your class system is. You can be very high in vitality or very weak in dexterity, stuff like that. And
Then
the
what you're just
owl bear
talking
coming
there,
from the top of the roof.
then what you're just comparing there is just
I mean, Diego
It's
or Dion, no offense, like you quite literally just talked about standard stuff in RPGs and how they care about detailing, which I'm not saying
yeah,
you're at fault for that, but
which is not fault, but
I
like
think
it's
it's more just we don't get like, at this point we are so burned out of development problems that we expect a game to just be able to launch and we call that okay, a bit of a win. Like
you know what's a perfect example of that?
what?
Sonic Forces. Like that's all I'll say. Sonic Forces.
I
Perfect
don't know
example.
much about Sonic Forces personally. You might need to explain.
Okay,
my God.
so for
So
starters,
long story short,
like
so much
Jesse, you
hype
want to
for the
explain this?
game. Sorry, like short answer, there was so much hype for this game, only to come out as a complete mess. That's the short story.
How bad of a mess were we talking about here?
So it's not a complete mess. More along the lines of it tried to do the whole Legend of Zelda kind of open world thing, but instead of having like actual like nice scenery, kind of got barren wasteland.
So they took open world but didn't put detail into the world. So it was just like
Yeah, and
it was very samey everywhere you went.
well, that and the whole like there's the other issue with like how you do collectibles and the storyline. This is the thing I'll have to say about the storyline. So for background information, they got one of the Sonic Archie comic writers who's still working for the Sonic comics to come in and write the story for Sonic Forces. And the problem with that is that he tries to do this whole everything is connected kind of deal. So you got from Sonic Adventure 2 to Sonic Riders to Lost World, Unleash, and some of those games should just be separate timelines in general because they make no sense as one continuous timeline. So that's a thing that's confusing. The other
Okay.
thing is that the combat system is criminally easy.
I mean, is it literally just like spam an ability and that gets you through the game?
There's like a moment where it's like Sonic does like a wind blade system, and if you just keep on doing the combo chain for that, you're just gonna win very easily.
So it's like people
No,
that spam strategies
no,
in Elden Ring.
no. We still talking about Sonic Forces or Frontiers?
Forces. We're not talking about frontiers. We're talking about
I thought
no
Frontiers
wait,
was the one that opened up that had open world. I thought Forces was
front.
not open world.
Oh man, I now I'm confused because like
Yeah,
I'm talking about forces.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
when you mention
Frontiers.
open world, I'm like
Yeah,
Frontier.
no, like, oh gosh, sorry, it's just I've been looking at a lot of the Sonic stuff lately, and I'm honestly kind of disappointed because like we got the TV show that's currently out right now. We got Sonic Superstar right now. There are hints of another modern Sonic game already being in the works, and I'm just kind of getting burned out because like I'm a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. I think he's a cool character, but gosh, it's hard.
The games aren't living up to what they should be.
Yeah, no, like I will say this, like the changes for Sonic started at around. I actually do agree. It probably started at around '06.
Yeah, good old six. Or,
Yep. Uh,
oh, wait,
let's move on with that because that's been talked to death.
All right,
And
so here's a good question. Let's kind of recircle to D&D for a little bit.
yep.
Do you think that here and this is a you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I have this as a genuine question. Do you guys think that D&D is too expensive to get into?
Actually, yeah, I will say D&D is very
Mm,
expensive to get into, especially because of like how much material you'll need for it. Even though it's imagination game.
Okay, and Jester, you sound like you have a different opinion. What would that be? Jester, did we lose him?
Uh, Jester, come in. 1 2 1 2. Come
yeah,
on.
no, I'm here.
Okay, he's here.
I'm here. I'm here. Like what happened?
No, what is your take on it? Do you think D&D is expensive?
Like, are you asking for my opinion?
Yes, your opinion. I mean, this is a podcast.
No. Like, I was just hearing the echo going off. I just, well, the thing is, D&D is a hobby. Most hobbies ain't that, well, there's some hobbies that could be cheap, and there's some hobbies, if you're really into it, well, ever heard of the term plastic crack from Warhammer 40k? Like,
Oh my god, don't
like
even get me
me?
started on Warhammer. Like, I like how
Oh
people
god.
make the comparison that D&D, Warhammer is just D&D, but only battles. It's not. Not a lot of D&D players use minis. That I wouldn't say it's a very large misconception, but it's a misconception. Like, I don't know a lot of people that use minis. I know people that have minis that put on their desk for decoration, but they don't use them in D&D. Minis are very hard to keep handle of. You also usually have to paint them. Warhammer is just minis the game.
I will say this: Warhammer lore is very confusing, more than D&D lore, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like it, like have you looked up Warhammer lore?
I mean, I know a little bit of it. I know what the factions are and why all the factions don't like each other.
I had a friend of mine, like
I also know
he
that
like
every faction is technically evil. That's why people like playing it. You're the villain no matter what you do. It's
yeah,
just
no,
some of them are less of a villain than others.
yeah, and
No, let's bang that up. It's not some of them are less of a villain. No, everyone are complete
Everybody's
assholes
in the
and
wrong. It's
xenophobic.
just some of them are
Everything underneath the sun.
It's stuff like
That
here's how I would like to describe it. They are all wrong, but it's like scaling racism and war crimes. Like it's like a different scale. They're all fucked up, but just in a different way. Like for example, the Necrons are fucked up because correct me if I'm wrong. They basically go, we woke up. This is our shit because we were here before. We want it back. Tyranids are evil in the sense of they are a hive, so they kind of just run around and do whatever they want. They're animals, but they're unstoppable. The orcs aren't liked because they're clearly based on Australians.
you're cutting out here and there.
I said the reason they don't like orcs is very simple. It's like British people with Australians, like, or at least in like older times. It's like a disdain almost. Orcs are also the most chaotic form of gremlin I've ever seen in existence.
Yeah,
Orcs are children with absurd amount of muscle mass. Then you have the humans, which are the Space Marines and all these random factions, which, if we talk about the Empire, is essentially a cult that sacrifices thousands a day to feed a dead god.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Okay, like a little lore behind that. It was not meant to be like that.
it was not meant to be
Shit
like
went
that, but
wrong.
that's the people in charge decided.
No, shit went completely wrong. That it became the thing. It swore not to be.
I wonder what it would be like for somebody in charge to just be like, yeah, no, we shouldn't kill people the next day. All right, we got 1,000 psychic people that we got to just completely sacrifice to our emperor. Well, shit, well, ain't that a bitch?
Let's not even like get into the whole fantasy side of like
Age of
Warhammer.
Sigmar is Age of Sigmar is interesting because they have a race called the Skaven that are basically STEM majors but rat people. They also live underground. They are also the most based people because they just screw with everybody else because they say gold is valuable to everybody else, but it's not useful to us, so we'll take it anyway. But why do you want to take it? Because it's useful to you. Money for us. Now, here's where I would like to go back into the topic of D&D. My topic on D&D is expensive. I would say it depends on how you play. If you're talking about minis going the whole like the whole distance with minis or LARPing, you are going to be spending money, but that's because you're doing an alternative. If we're talking about D&D, I think there's only 5 books you need to really play a game, play D&D fully. Not counting like all the books that come with their own classes and backgrounds, etc. I am saying the Monster Man, you got to get the trio first of all, the staple trio, which is the DM's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual. You only really need the Player's Handbook because the DM can just come up with creatures or use like free sources to do all of this. But if you got to get books, you get the DM's Guide, you get the Player's Handbook, you get the Monster Manual, then you get Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and you get Tasha's Cauldron of Everything,
Mm-hmm.
which both of those basically expand everything that you can do to a place where you're not going to have any issues, which I personally really like having all 5 of those now that I do. And I look back to when I didn't have them, it was a pain in the ass. Like some of these classes did not have what they needed, and they essentially patched the game through these books. Now, do I think they should have done it that way? Not at all. But I'm glad that we have them now. Now saying that, what I am doing personally, and this is not an announcement, but more just a comment. I am actually working on my own modified version of 5e, where I have more classes, more skills, some in-house rule stuff that's built in, like meets it beat, like not just meets it beats it, but there's alternative ways to apply damage and all that. But I think one of the things that I liked that I don't like about D&D still is while this is the most, we're currently in the 5th edition as of recording this podcast, which is considered, I think Jester, would you agree with me on this? D&D 5e is considered the most new player friendly edition compared to every one of the other ones so far, which
It is no player friendly.
it is. And I mean, I also don't know if I'm right on this, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure this is the first edition that had a starter adventure, and then they did it 2 more times. Because we first had Lost Mines of Fendelver, then we got Dragons of Icefire Peak, and Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, which I don't care what people say, Dragon of Icefire Peak was the best of those 3, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I would also like to say though is I think where D&D is going wrong in terms of like making it and what they should do to make things easier to purchase. Here's my personal beef. Most of the D like in most of the D&D books cost about $50, like 50 to 60. I think nowadays they go for 60.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with that is honestly that we shouldn't have to pay $50 for a book. Like I buy them on Amazon and they're like $30. Like those books are worth $30. I don't agree with the idea that they are that it should be worth as much as it is.
Mhm.
I think that the problem with all this is we have allowed certain things to happen where it is now a lot more difficult for people to get into D&D or get into anything really that involves D&D because now you really do have to almost invest in everything like and now Diego, what is or Dion, what is your thought on D&D being expensive? Like where do you think it should be in price?
Like, okay, like even though like I did say it's expensive, I think the $60 range is actually a pretty good price. After like getting my own book, like
Well, no, no, no.
$60.
I'm saying per book it was 50 to 60.
Oh, per book, I think like if it's just the book itself, I think you should try going more along the lines of trying to make it more around $30 at most, because like the books are very informal, have a lot of information that you could use and need, especially when you're trying to like figure out how to set up monster encounters in the games. But for it to be like $60, you gotta have to make the book a little bit thicker, or combine two books into one for it to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm going to quickly check here. So, from what D&D says, let's say each of these books is $50. You are paying without shipping. Let's assume you buy these online. Without shipping, you're probably going to be paying about $170, $160
Mm-hmm.
on Amazon right now. And I am not saying that, and I'm not going to say that I think that this is the smart way of doing it, but I personally just recommend doing it on Amazon because I'm looking at it right now because I just had them all in something.
Mm-hmm.
You are literally looking at $130. You are looking at up to 20. You're looking at shipping off and all of that at once,
Mm-hmm.
which that should say something. I mean, your secondhand market, which is Amazon. Which, hang on, let me look at the list here. So, in bestsellers for puzzle and game reference on Amazon, first place is the Player's Handbook. Third and fourth place is the Master's Guide at third, the Monster Manual at fourth, and in eighth place is the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Like, they are in the top eight thing. Like on Amazon of all places, they are the biggest. Like, they are the biggest like bought product.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so expensive. And even the Dungeons and Dragons starter set is at 32nd place, which, I mean, firstly, though, this one comes from 2014, which I don't personally recommend that one.
Yeah.
If anybody here is going to get into D&D, I recommend the D&D Essentials kit, which comes with the Icefire Peak adventure, which is an amazing adventure. It's three different quests, all in one with side quest options, all in one book, and it's like 3 to 4 sessions, so 12, 16 hours max. You get 20 hours out of it at most. But it's only it's $17 on Amazon right now. Like, you could buy this. It comes with a rough reference book. It comes with an adventure. You come with character sheets, pre-built character sheets. Like, this came out in 2019, right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it's really good. And even when I bought it at this Target, it was $40.
Huh.
Or not $40, it was 30. That's not bad. That's not bad at all.
No, it isn't.
Like, that is, again, awesome. Like, you get all of that, and you have no problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question for you guys is, what is Jester? What is your thought process on D&D? Like, do you agree with the idea that everything should be $30?
I would say make the main book
50, and any add-ons or yeah, like any add-ons, unless you're making a completely new adventure and new set of stuff. No, like sorry, let me rephrase it. Main stuff 50, fine. If it's small add-ons or something to spice up the adventure or more options, 30. Unless you're making a whole nother thing, then you're fine making it around 50 if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's my next question for you guys. What would you say is the biggest issue with D&D right now? Like, would you say it's is it anything with the system? Or would you say the only issue right now is really just is it really just other issues that we don't even is it issues in game or do you think there's more issues outside of it in terms of like pricing and business the business end?
Well, I feel like one of the problems, in my opinion, is that you could still help make it a little bit more simpler. Like, okay, instead of using like D&D Beyond, like if you want to do it physically, you could use a simpler or like an easier way to like help write out the system and everything. Because like to me, it's still kind of like difficult to be like, okay, which gets more proficiency in, which gets more of a +2, and like if you're playing a wizard character, like spell plus bonus, like a little bit more clear on that would help out greatly, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, here's where the next thing comes in. What is everybody's thoughts here about? So, if D&D suddenly turned into a cheap game, like let's just say all of a sudden it turned into I don't know, like let's say the adventure, like they made adventure start being $20. Do you think that that would lose us content, or do you think them it would be more likely that we would get like what do you think would happen? I guess.
I definitely believe that when it comes down to the game, if it became more cheaper, I feel like there would be a dip in quality for the game. Because of the fact that it's more affordable, people are going to take it more lenient. I mean, like it would be nice, people that don't have as much money would be able to would be able to get more access to it. But it also will make them. It also could like lead to whoever owns the company to like not try as hard. That's just my view set on it in general.
Currently, they're owned by Hasbro, which makes basically every children's board game known to man.
Yeah.
Grant, now here's another question. Jester, and this one's for you. Do you think Hasbro's the problem with D&D, or do you think the problem is how people view D&D nowadays? Like how it's changed from a nerd thing to essentially a global culture of its own. Like it's not even
Yeah, let's
part
be
of
glad it's not like the
No.
'90s. Let's just be glad it's not like
it's not nerd culture anymore. It's really its own culture.
yeah.
Like I would say it's more of a Hasbro thing.
What do you think they've not done well besides the OGL? Like what do you think has changed since they acquired D&D and Wizards of the Coast? Like
Honestly, corporate greed. What else to say?
what about corporate greed? Like I
It's
guess
it's
my question is
it's
is
that
what
it's more so
about
of like
what they've done? So
it's more so of they see it's a popular hobby. They try to see if they can like milk so much out of it. They do really dumb decisions and trying to slightly gatekeep it Good example, the OGL thinking, if they do this and that, they'll get more money. Which, by the way, we all know that's straight up backfire with the OGL business. No, like back on that entire OGL business. What was it? The I forgot the company that made Pathfinder. Straight up made their own
Kobold Press. I
OGL
believe they're
thing.
called Kobold Press.
Yeah, Cobalt Press. Straight up made their own OGL saying, "Hey, you can do all of this stuff without without the complete utter nonsense that Hasbro and Wizard of the Coast straight do." And like other people straight up start making their own D&D or tabletop their own systems. Heck, even I'm mentioning older older tabletop systems that exist. Like I'm not sure if any of you guys heard of this one called GURPS.
Yeah, which was made after D&D came out, Generalized Universal Role Playing System. Now, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of this year was when, which I still think it's crazy to think that the open gaming license incident, which let me Google it real quick. The OGL scandal was okay. So here's how it's explained, and I'll break it down from a Reddit article that I've had bookmarked. Here's a real quick breakdown with a bit of copyright laws. Most regular copyrights essentially state we own this thing, nobody can use, reference, copy, or modify it without permission. In the early 2000s, Wizards of the Coast, which we'll call WotC from now on, published the Open Gaming License, or OGL, which is a public copyright. It essentially states we own this thing, which is D&D, but any member of the public can use, reference, copy, or modify it, and publish it under the same license as long as you follow certain rules. This was an amazing move for WotC and tabletop RPGs in general. It meant that third-party publishers could create, publish, and profit from D&D related material. That means they didn't have to worry about skirting around copyright laws and accidentally creating something that could lead to a lawsuit. And they also don't have to go through the expensive legal process of arranging their own copyright. Well, WotC didn't directly profit from any third-party publisher content published under it. It was an amazing move for them, and it bolstered the available content for D&D, since it made it a lot easier for them to make it content for a game everyone knows, rather than kick off their own tabletop. This was great because it allowed content that would have been from brand new games into D&D's direct competition instead of without the OGL. It suddenly became centered around their IP. In short, while they don't directly profit from it, the material itself almost entirely useless without the user also being a customer of D&D. Recently, this took place in January of 2023. So in January, they announced that they wanted to change the OGL despite it being originally designed to be irrevocable and unchangeable. That was the first thing a lot of people got pissed off about. They said it was never going to be modified, and then they went and tried to modify it. These changes included that third-party publishers would have had to pay a quarter of their D&D related revenue to Wizards of the Coast. And Wizards would have been, due to the way they legally worded it, they would have been able to steal, publish, and profit from any material published under it without giving credit to or even notifying the original creator. It also states that all content previously published under it needs to be moved onto their own road or risk being sued into oblivion. The entire tabletop RPG community went up in arms, pitchforks, and torches, and then from the depths of them comes Paizo, the creator of Pathfinder and their biggest rival. It also was worth noting that a huge chunk of the bigwigs Paizo are ex-Wizards of the Coast employees and are well-versed in what the OGL stands for and how it was used. WotC was supposed to officially announce their OGL yesterday, but canceled the announcement due to all the backlash while they backpedaled to make changes. On the same day, if I'm not mistaken, Paizo announced ORC, the Open RPG Creative License. This is their own copyright that allows creators to publish anything in the same way they did under the OGL, which basically snagged, I don't remember how much, I think the estimation was like 20% of the entire community basically got yoinked. And the issue with that is So for those who don't understand the podcast, to put it bluntly, this essentially said that D&D the people at D&D would charge you if you made any content under their license. So you would make your money. It's like how you have ad revenue from YouTube and you get paid for videos, and they take a certain cut of it. Like they basically said, instead of you getting all your money, now we're gonna get a cut, and you're gonna give us 25%. So you're not making your money anymore. You're making 75% of what you make. And even then, they could also just say, "Hey, we want your material. It's ours now. Don't use it anymore." Like they could basically take over the copyright for it and say you are no longer in ownership of it because you signed your soul, which the soul in this case being your creative content, over to us. So therefore, we can take it, claim it as ours. We can make money off of it and not give you a dime. We also don't have to notify you either. We can just take it whenever we want. Which let me see real quick. What they did differently. They just so everything old is new again. Official details on the OGL 1.1 released by Gizmodo. So let me read the Gizmodo article out loud. So let's see. The original OGL is a contemporary tabletop system. So a lot actually. While the original open gaming license is a relatively short document coming at under 900 words, they've now provided it to be 9,000 words long. They do, however, take explicit content targeting at published material that is blatantly racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, discriminatory, or otherwise bigoted. They also, however, do make some very straight rules about you cannot make under the OGL any NFTs or blockchain, which can we also just point out here, while I get that NFTs are meant to be like art where there's only one of a kind artwork, it was stupid because
It's annoying.
people tried to make it the new Bitcoin, which was dumb. Also, NFTs were usually pictures. Like, then wasn't there a YouTuber that got in trouble for a crypto scandal where he did NFTs and like it failed?
That's a good question.
Wasn't that one of the Paul brothers? Like it was called MetaZoo. It wasn't called MetaZoo, but it was like CryptoZoo or something.
Yeah, no, that's one of the Paul ones. That was Logan Paul. He made CoffeeZilla did an entire video on it, and it was honestly pretty good. But just to summarize it, like he scammed people out of money because of reasons of like this crypto zoo thing, and now it's going off in his face. And it doesn't matter. Both of the Paul brothers are horrible.
So the way they explain it, so they continue on explaining how the biggest changes are they they update the previously available OGL to state that it is no longer an authorized license agreement. By ending it, many licensed publishers will have to overhaul their products and distribution to coordinate with the rules. The open gaming license granted a perpetual worldwide non-exclusive license, and which is also called the SRD, which we all know of right now. They directly licensed them to do all this content. The new document clarifies the warranties. So essentially, what they did, which let me find how people describe it. So they decided two things. The software developer and aficionado have been through this for the mid-80s. They did the same thing with the AT&T and the Santa Cruz operation did perpetual. Currently, Watchy is trying to come up with something where they still get better monetization. Acquired in 1997, in 1999 for 325 million, even if that D&D was brought into further release. Lets players use its license openly. So upsets in industry. How much did they lose? So what's more, any products created under the new license will be reported to, or will be required to report earnings. Any company that makes more than $750,000, including crowdfunding materials, will owe WotC 25% in royalties. The crowdfunding platform Kickstarter said they started negotiating that would go down to 20 for them using Kickstarter. It would also give them non-exclusives. Open D&D was a hashtag for a while. They talked about which there was a boycott on it. People unsubscribed from D&D Beyond, which,
Wow.
how much, I'm going to Google that. D&D in January, they basically talked about how is dead. I don't like how they're losing money. Here's how I would like to put it. And this is a message that, while I am somebody that would want to work at Wizards of the Coast, I am not. Here's how I would like to look at the situation. I don't agree at all with how Wizards did this. I know that Hasbro is at fault here because we all know that D&D, that Wizards of the Coast, they're just a bunch of nerds. They don't know how to fuck up like this. This is corporate fuck up. But here's my very clear statement. To those who are in charge of Wizards and have to report to people at Hasbro. So this really goes to the Hasbro people that made this decision. Y'all fucked up big time. You lost about 10% of your community overnight. And I think I think it's fair to say at least 15% of your community is not going to trust you, is not going to come back ever. And the rest of that community has no trust in you, except for maybe 5%, which is newcomers. I would like to also point something out here. Because of the SRD, which it took about a little over 2 weeks. I believe it took 16 days for them to get the 16, 18 days, which according to some of these people here, the OGL was changed in the 28th. Yeah, so it was 16 days. It took them 16 days to realize how they fucked up. The most common response I'm reading here just by reading D&D Beyond's forum is, you know this isn't right and this isn't the way you treat your community. Your community is only to grow smaller and smaller. Mine is not the only thread saying this. Figure it out. Here's what companies like with Hasbro need to remember, which Hasbro is a game company. What they need to realize is games are enjoyed when they are cheap, efficient, and affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Two of those basically saying it's got to be cheap. When you then try to take a game like D&D, which has a lot of homemade content, which, even if they don't publish it, the problem is then you're scaring off not just those that are wanting to publish, but those that are publishing content. You're going to drive away a lot of your potential, all because you want more money. This isn't greedy Wizards, this is greedy Hasbro. It says it all over the place. Another comment, makes me sad I can't support a company that's going to blatantly hurt its creators. I'll be glad to always be in the way of them making money. You have 11 months to change my mind, multi-year subscriber. I doubt I'll be publishing anything anytime soon either. Time to fire the CEO of Wizards. You gambled and lost. You could have held focus groups with third-party publishers to come to some sort of mutual agreement, but you got greedy. Now you hurt the bottom line and wrecked your brand. Me and my group have been using D&D Beyond for official adventures. Your greed has made me pause and consider how we're going to play moving forward. Shame on you. I mean, I'll keep playing, but I'm not going to give any money. I'm probably just going to pirate and go back to 3.5 and play Pathfinder. My current subscription runs through August 23rd and is not set to renew. I could revoke them any months. If I could revoke them, I would. The OGL 1.1 is a foot-seeking shotgun still. I hope somebody at WotC wakes up and realizes this is not the way. Yep, I've been playing since 1978. The content, art, and focus has been terrible. They're burning the community old and new to the ground as well. It would be the finer nail in the coffin, master sub canceled. My subscription is paid until November. I'll make sure not to renew it if it's not updated. I've played and purchased D&D since the 80s. Here's the thing. This should point out one thing. You are a company that is made by nerds. And I don't know if people internally fought back against this. I would hope to God they did. But those in charge of Wizards, I don't mean any disrespect when I say this. I know that there is a corporate system that I don't understand fully. But I think this should tell you, you are a company that a lot of people are passionate about, myself included. D&D is what I want to do. I want to make lore for a living. That is my dream job. But I don't want to do it for a company that is going to let themselves be basically puppeted into turning into a money vacuum. This is not you. This is Hasbro. You should have tried to make Hasbro realize how much this would have burned them.
Dude, you're actually cutting out. You're not saying anything anymore.
I know, and I'm sorry. On my end, my mic is going off, but at the same time, it's not. I am very passionately pissed off. Like,
Well, yeah, no, it makes sense because of the fact of like how like we were we were good, they were great with the fans and everything, and then all of a sudden this massive tidal wave of change came in, and everybody just started hating them due to the fact of how they just ruined so many people's enjoyment of the game because of just like how they wanted to. I don't know what it was, but like as a company, it's just like why.
I've been so let's listen to this entire one by somebody named Unwise Soundwise, which has the most realistic comment here. I also encourage everyone to cancel their subscription. To also remember that no matter what pressure we put on them, WotC and Hasbro always try something again to get money. They think we owe them for playing their make-believe game. I've been a strong supporter of D&D since the days of TSR, and I've defended using Fabvl as a core system for almost every game I've played in the past 6 years, even if I had to homebrew it a bit. I've bought almost every hardcover book and source book here. I've brought branded mini spell cards, a couple of B&G premium editions, video games, and more WizKids junk that I care to admit. At first, I thought we would pressure them to restore the OGL so we could keep the magic going, but now that I realize that without the OGL, WotC is just another TTRPG publisher among others. Most of those others, by the way, have way more respect and trust in their community than WotC have far better employees in their products. It's not like D&D has been the best rule set for the best intellectual properties. It's just been the most accessible. D&D was just a brand of these people, and then let's let them have it. Drenched in burning feces and having been pummeled by rotting vegetables. We can do better. We could always do better, but we never needed to until now. That is a very accurate statement.
That is, it really is.
And even Critical Role, from all of us at Critical Role, let's listen to this. Critical Role has always supported creators in game development in the tabletop space. We stand by our industry peers, as well as anyone who takes a risk at creating a new system or developing an original idea. The beauty of gaming comes from the opportunity to share inclusive, diverse, and compelling stories from a wide spectrum of creators. That's exactly why we launched our own game publishing company a few years ago, because we believe that broadening the field of creators boosts the entire industry. The success we have experienced is thanks to the passion and interest of the greater tabletop community, and we commit to fostering an environment that allows everyone the opportunity to easily share the stories they wish to tell. What people were able to break this down from on Reddit is if they are under an NDA, this says quite a bit. If this is a conflict between Open Gaming and WotC, they've said which one they support. They aren't allowed to say anything against them, so they're making clear they support their peers and keeping things open for creatives who want to make content. I know it feels empty to people that want to make a big heroic stand and strike down the dragon that has hit the way the casualties they do so. Given they're effectively on a campaign-long D&D Beyond sponsorship, CR is definitely under a combination of NDAs, anti-disparagement, brand risk, and early termination clauses. Here's where I think people went wrong with that whole comment. Everybody thought that that Critical Role, which is CR here, that was going to basically make their own system, and that was going to be that. I don't agree with that idea. I don't think they ever would have done that. What I think would have happened instead is we would have dealt with more like they would have just said, hey, we're going to modify the system, which is what I'm doing. I think so to wrap up this entire debate, this entire issue, this is an event that happened in the past year for those who don't know what D&T was. It was an event that basically scarred the community. Everyone was terrified about making content, and a lot of people left D&D because if they were going to treat the people that published content for them and made them money like that, who knows what they would have done next to the people that just purchase content. Some people even expected that D&D was going to become $100 a book. So,
oh, man, that would have been a nightmare to do.
Which, I mean, to be fair, D&D Wizards needs to realize that as much like I've also heard people say, Wizards would their next move would have been trying to shut down as many people using like pirated sources as possible. You're never going to shut down all the people that have pirated PDFs because a lot of people do that instead and they just keep them digitally. I don't own PDFs of D&D really myself other than homebrew content. I think the only quote unquote pirated PDF I have is an old like copy of the 2014 Player's Handbook, which even then like it was free at the time through Reddit, and and all of these have been updated to places like AnyFlip, which they don't make money off of it. They just give access to the material. So I could get why Wizards would be pissed, but that's not enough to be a lawsuit. But I
Yep.
think that, I mean, is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Or,
No, I think that's about it.
well, thank you guys very much for coming to the podcast. Thank you for all of those listening to the podcast. We hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. God bless you all. Stay safe.